The telegram in Catherine Monroe's trembling hands confirmed her worst fear. Her younger sister Emma had vanished without a trace in the lawless territories of Arizona, and the local marshal had given up the search after only 2 weeks. Catherine stood on the dusty platform of the Tucson train station in late September of 1882, her traveling dress already coated with a fine layer of desert sand despite her careful preparations back in Boston. She had spent every cent of her savings to make this journey, driven by a bond stronger than reason and more persistent than hope. Emma had come west 6 months ago to work as a school teacher in a small settlement called Copper Ridge, and her letters had arrived regularly until they suddenly stopped 3 weeks past. The marshal's telegram had been curt and dismissive, suggesting Emma had likely run off with some drifter or met an unfortunate end in the unforgiving desert. But Catherine knew her sister better than anyone in the world. Emma was practical, level-headed, and devoted to her students. She would never simply disappear without word, and she certainly would not abandon her responsibilities or her family. Something terrible had happened, and if the authorities would not help, Catherine would find Emma herself. The sun beat down mercilessly as Catherine hired a wagon to take her to Copper Ridge, a 2-day journey into increasingly desolate country. The driver, an older man with sun-weathered skin and sympathetic eyes, tried to discourage her from pursuing what he called a fool's errand. "Miss, I do not mean to be indelicate, but young women who go missing out here rarely turn up in ways their families want to find them," he said gently as they rolled through endless stretches of sagebrush and red rock. "Then I will face whatever truth awaits me," Catherine replied, her jaw set with determination that masked the terror churning in her stomach. "But I will not abandon my sister to speculation and rumor. She deserves better than that." Copper Ridge proved to be even smaller and rougher than Catherine had imagined. The settlement consisted of little more than a general store, a saloon, a tiny church that doubled as the schoolhouse, and a scattering of weathered buildings clinging to existence in the harsh landscape. The marshal's office was closed when she arrived, so Catherine checked into the settlement's only boarding house and prepared to begin her investigation at first light. The marshal, a portly man named Griggs who smelled of whiskey even at 9 in the morning, proved utterly unhelpful when Catherine confronted him the next day. "Your sister was a pretty girl, Miss Monroe, and pretty girls attract attention," he said with a shrug that made Catherine's blood boil. "She was seen talking to various men around town. Could have gone off with any of them or could have gotten herself into trouble. Either way, she is gone now, and I have actual crimes to worry about." "So you are simply going to do nothing?" Catherine demanded, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "I am saying there is nothing to be done," Griggs replied, leaning back in his chair. "Trail's cold, assuming there ever was one. Best thing you can do is go home and accept that your sister made her choices." Catherine stormed out of the marshal's office, furious, and fighting back tears of frustration. She spent the rest of the day talking to anyone in Copper Ridge who would speak with her, showing Emma's photograph and asking questions. Most people remembered Emma fondly but could offer little useful information. She had been well-liked, dedicated to her teaching, and kept largely to herself outside of school hours. It was the general store owner, a sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Patterson, who finally provided Catherine with her first real lead. "There was some trouble a few weeks before your sister disappeared," Mrs. Patterson said quietly, glancing around to make sure they would not be overheard. "A gang of outlaws came through town, rough men led by someone called Dalton Reeves. They were looking for someone or something, I never did learn what, made everyone nervous with their questions and their threats. Your sister's boarding house was searched one night, torn apart. Next morning, Emma was gone." "Why did Marshal Griggs not mention any of this?" Catherine asked, her heart pounding. Mrs. Patterson's expression turned grim. "Because Griggs is either a coward or on someone's payroll. He made himself scarce when Reeves and his men were in town, and he has shown no interest in finding your sister. If you want the truth, you had better look elsewhere." "Where should I start?" Catherine asked desperately. "There is a rancher about 10 miles north of here, man named Cole Brennan. He has a reputation as someone who does not tolerate outlaws on his land. and he came into town asking questions about those men right after they left. If anyone knows something about what happened, it might be him. But I will warn you, he is not known for being friendly to strangers. Catherine borrowed a horse from the livery stable the next morning, despite the stable master's protests that she did not look like she knew how to ride. She had learned basic horsemanship as a girl during summer visits to her uncle's farm, and though she was far from expert, desperation made her bold. The directions Mrs. Patterson had provided were simple enough. Follow the creek bed north until she reached a valley marked by distinctive red rock formations, then look for the ranch gate. The landscape grew more rugged as she rode, the desert terrain giving way to rolling hills dotted with juniper and pine. By midday, Catherine spotted the red rocks Mrs. Patterson had described, and soon after she found the entrance to the Brennan Ranch. The gate was simple but sturdy, and the property beyond stretched for what looked like miles, with cattle grazing in the distance and mountains rising dramatically on the horizon. The ranch house itself was a solid structure of timber and stone, built to withstand the harsh elements and clearly maintained by someone who took pride in their property. Catherine dismounted on shaky legs, tied her horse to the hitching post, and approached the front door with her heart hammering in her chest. Before she could knock, the door swung open to reveal a man who took her breath away despite the circumstances. Cole Brennan stood well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders, dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, and striking blue eyes that currently regarded her with deep suspicion. He was younger than she had expected, probably not yet 30, and devastatingly handsome in a way that made Catherine forget momentarily why she had come. "This is private property," he said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to resonate in Catherine's chest. "State your business or turn around." Catherine forced herself to focus, clutching Emma's photograph like a lifeline. "My name is Catherine Monroe. I am looking for my sister Emma, who disappeared from Copper Ridge 3 weeks ago. I was told you might have information about the men who were threatening people in town before she vanished." Something flickered in Cole's eyes, an emotion Catherine could not quite read. His jaw tightened, and for a long moment he simply stared at her. Then he stepped back from the doorway. "You need to leave," he said, but there was something in his tone that was not quite as harsh as his words. "I cannot help you." "Cannot or will not?" Catherine challenged, surprising herself with her boldness. "Please, I've come all the way from Boston. Emma is my only sister, my only family. If you know anything at all about what happened to her, I am begging you to tell me." "Miss Monroe, I am going to say this once," Cole said, his voice dropping lower. "There are dangerous people looking for your sister. The best thing you can do is go back to Boston and forget you ever came here. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the same kind of trouble that she did." Catherine felt as though she had been struck by lightning. "You know where she is. You know what happened to her." "I did not say that," Cole replied quickly, but the denial came too late. "You did not have to," Catherine said, pushing past him into the house before he could stop her. "Where is she? Is she alive? Is she hurt? I swear to you, I am not leaving this ranch until I see my sister." Cole caught her arm, his grip firm but not painful. "You're going to get her killed if you keep making noise like this. Do you understand? There are people who want to find Emma very badly, and if they realize you are here looking for her, they will follow you straight to her." "Then tell me what is happening," Catherine pleaded, looking up into his eyes. "Tell me why my sister is in danger and why you are protecting her. Please, I have a right to know." Cole studied her face for what felt like an eternity. Catherine could see the conflict playing out behind his eyes, the weighing of risks and responsibilities. Finally, he released her arm and ran a hand through his hair in obvious frustration. "Emma is here," he said quietly. "She is alive and unharmed. I have been hiding her for the past 3 weeks because there are outlaws who want her dead, and they will not stop looking until they find her or believe she is already gone." Relief crashed over Catherine with such force that her knees nearly buckled. "Can I see her? Please, I need to see that she is truly safe." Cole hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me, but you need to understand the situation before you go making any plans. This is not as simple as taking your sister home." He led Catherine through the well-kept ranch house to a back bedroom. When he knocked softly and opened the door, Catherine saw her sister sitting by the window with a book in her lap. Emma looked thinner than Catherine remembered, and there were shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. But she was whole and alive. "Emma!" Catherine cried, rushing forward. Emma's eyes went wide with shock and horror. "Catherine, no, you should not be here. How did you find me?" The sisters embraced fiercely, both of them crying now. Catherine pulled back to look at Emma's face, touching her cheeks and her hair as if to convince herself this was real. "I got a telegram saying you had disappeared. I could not just sit in Boston and do nothing," Catherine said. "Emma, what happened? Why are you hiding here?" Emma glanced at Cole, who leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed. His expression was unreadable, but Catherine noticed how his eyes softened when they rested on Emma, and how Emma looked to him as if seeking reassurance. "I witnessed something I should not have," Emma said quietly, sinking back onto the edge of the bed. "About 6 weeks ago, I was walking back to my boarding house late one evening after preparing lessons at the schoolhouse. I saw a group of men meeting behind the saloon. They were discussing a robbery, planning to ambush a stagecoach carrying a gold shipment from the mines. I recognized one of the voices as belonging to Marshal Griggs." Catherine's breath caught. "The Marshal is working with outlaws?" "More than that," Cole interjected, his voice hard. "Griggs has been feeding information to Dalton Reeves and his gang for over a year. They have been systematically robbing shipments, and Griggs ensures there is never any real investigation. He gets a cut of the profits and keeps his position of authority." "I must have made some noise because they realized someone was listening," Emma continued, her voice shaking slightly. "I ran, but they saw me. The next morning, one of Griggs's deputies came to the schoolhouse and said the marshal wanted to speak with me. I knew if I went, I would never leave that office alive. I grabbed what I could carry and I ran." "How did you end up here?" Catherine asked, looking between her sister and Cole. Emma's cheeks flushed slightly. "I had met Mr. Brennan once before when he came to town for supplies. He had been kind to me when some of the local men were being inappropriate. I did not know where else to go, so I came to his ranch. He could have turned me away, but instead he has been protecting me, keeping me safe while trying to figure out how to expose Griggs and his partners without getting me killed in the process." Catherine looked at Cole with new respect and gratitude. "Thank you for keeping her safe? But surely we can go to the territorial authorities now. Emma can testify about what she heard." "It is not that simple," Cole said, pushing off from the door frame and pacing the small room. "We do not know how far Reeves's corruption extends. He has connections throughout the territory, and if we go to the wrong person, Emma will be dead before she can testify. I have been trying to gather evidence, solid proof that cannot be dismissed, but it has been slow going." "There has to be something we can do," Catherine insisted. We cannot just hide here forever." "No, we cannot," Cole agreed, his eyes meeting Catherine's. "And now that you are here, the situation has become even more complicated. If Reeves's men saw you asking questions in Copper Ridge, if they followed you here, then I have been compromised, and so has Emma's hiding place." Catherine felt guilt wash over her. "I was careful. I do not think anyone followed me." "You do not know these men like I do," Cole said grimly. "They are smart and they are patient. We need to assume the worst and prepare accordingly." Over the next few hours, Cole explained the full situation. He had been working with a territorial judge named Harrison who was known for his integrity, slowly building a case against Reeves and his network. But they needed more than just Emma's testimony. They needed witnesses, documentation, proof of the robberies and Griggs's involvement. Cole had been using his position as a respected rancher to gather information, but it was dangerous work. As the day wore on, Catherine found herself watching Cole with growing fascination. He was clearly intelligent and principled, risking his own safety to protect Emma and seek justice. The way he moved through his home spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin, and the care he showed in discussing their predicament revealed a thoughtful nature beneath his rough exterior. That evening, as Emma helped prepare dinner, Catherine stood on the front porch, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. Cole joined her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered her one without a word, and they stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "I owe you an apology," Catherine said finally. "I may have put all of us in danger by coming here." "You were trying to find your sister," Cole replied. "I cannot fault you for that. Family loyalty is something I understand." "Do you have family nearby?" Catherine asked. Cole's expression darkened slightly. "My parents died when I was young. Influenza. I built this ranch from nothing with help from a few good friends. It has been just me for a long time now." "That sounds lonely," Catherine said softly. Cole glanced at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "It has been. But having Emma here these past weeks, it has reminded me what it is like to have someone to protect, someone to care about beyond just myself and my livestock." Catherine heard something in his voice that made her look more closely at him. "You care about my sister." It was not a question, and Cole did not try to deny it. "She is brave and kind and stronger than she knows. Yes, I care about her, but my first priority is keeping her safe, whatever that takes." Before Catherine could respond, Emma called them in for dinner. The meal was simple but well prepared, and despite the tension of their situation, Catherine found herself relaxing slightly. The ranch house felt warm and safe, and watching Emma and Cole interact, she could see the affection growing between them even if they had not yet acknowledged it openly. Late that night, after Emma had gone to bed, Catherine and Cole sat by the fireplace discussing their options. Catherine had insisted on being included in any planning, arguing that she was already involved whether Cole liked it or not. "Judge Harrison is supposed to send word when he has enough to move against Reeves and Griggs," Cole explained, staring into the flames, "but that could take weeks or months. The longer we wait, the more danger Emma is in, and now you too." "What if we did not wait?" Catherine suggested. "What if we forced their hand somehow?" Cole looked at her sharply. "What are you proposing?" "I do not know exactly," Catherine admitted, "but there has to be a way to draw them out, to make them reveal themselves. If we could catch them in the act of something, if we could get witnesses who could not be intimidated or bought off." "That is incredibly dangerous," Cole said, but she could see he was considering it. "Everything about this situation is dangerous," Catherine countered. "At least this way we would be taking action instead of just waiting and hoping." They talked late into the night, developing the outline of a plan. It was risky and required careful timing, but it might work. They would need help. People they could trust, absolutely. Cole mentioned a few neighboring ranchers who he knew to be honest men, and Catherine suggested contacting Judge Harrison directly to coordinate. As the fire burned down to embers and exhaustion finally caught up with them, Cole showed Catherine to the guest room. At the doorway, she turned to face him. "Thank you again for protecting Emma," she said quietly. "I can see that you care for her deeply. She's lucky to have found someone like you." Cole's expression softened. "I am the lucky one, Miss Monroe. Your sister is extraordinary. I just hope I can keep her safe long enough to tell her how I feel." "Call me Catherine," she said with a small smile, "and I think she already knows." The next morning, Cole rode out early to contact Judge Harrison and gather his trusted friends. Catherine and Emma spent the day together, catching up on everything that had happened since Emma had left Boston. Despite the circumstances, Catherine felt closer to her sister than she had in years. The crisis had stripped away any pretense or small talk, leaving only honesty and love. "You care for him, do not you?" Catherine asked as they worked in the kitchen garden that afternoon. Emma's hands stilled on the tomato plant she had been tending. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who knows you as well as I do," Catherine assured her. "Have you told him?" "How can I?" Emma said, her voice heavy with frustration. "I am nothing but trouble for him. He has risked everything to protect me, and all I have brought him is danger. When this is over, assuming we all survive, he will probably be relieved to see me go." "I do not think that is true at all," Catherine said gently. "I have seen the way he looks at you, Emma. That man is in love with you, even if he has not said the words yet." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I love him too. I have tried not to, tried to keep my distance because I know I cannot stay here forever. but he is everything I never knew I was looking for. He is strong and good and gentle in ways that matter. When this is all over, leaving him is going to break my heart." Catherine hugged her sister tightly. "Then do not leave. Stay and build a life here. You have already lost so much, Emma. Do not lose this too." Cole returned as the sun was setting, bringing with him Judge Harrison and 3 ranchers from neighboring properties. The men gathered in Cole's front room, and Catherine and Emma joined them to finalize their plan. Judge Harrison was a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. He listened carefully as Cole explained the situation and their proposed course of action. "This is dangerous," Harrison said when Cole finished. "If Reeves suspects a trap, people will die." "People will die anyway if we do nothing," Cole replied. "Reeves and his men are getting bolder. It is only a matter of time before they come for Emma and probably anyone else who might threaten their operation." The plan they had developed was straightforward but required precise timing. They would spread word through carefully chosen channels that a large gold shipment would be traveling from the mines to Tucson in 3 days' time. The route would take the stagecoach past Cole's ranch, and they would make sure Griggs heard about it through his usual sources. If Griggs was truly working with Reeves, he would alert the outlaws to the shipment. Meanwhile, Judge Harrison would assemble a group of territorial marshals who were beyond corruption, men he had personally vetted. They would be hidden along the route, ready to catch Reeves and his gang in the act. Emma would provide her testimony, and with the outlaws caught red-handed and Griggs' connection to them exposed, the case would be solid. "What about bait?" one of the ranchers asked. "Reeves will expect guards on a gold shipment. If it looks too easy, he will smell a trap." "I will drive the stagecoach," Cole said. "Reeves knows me by reputation. He knows I sometimes transport valuables for the mining companies. If he sees me driving, he will believe it is legitimate." "That puts you directly in the line of fire," Catherine protested. "There has to be another way." "There is not," Cole said, meeting her eyes steadily. "This has to look real. I will be armed, and I will have the marshals in position, but someone needs to sell the illusion, and I am the logical choice." Emma had gone pale, her hands clenched in her lap. "Cole, you could be killed." "I will not be," he said, with a confidence Catherine hoped was justified. "Trust me, Emma, I have been in tough situations before. I know how to handle myself." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Judge Harrison returned to Tucson to assemble his marshals and spread the information about the fictional gold shipment through channels that would reach Griggs. The neighboring ranchers helped Cole prepare the stagecoach and ensure his ranch hands were ready to protect the property if Reeves tried anything there. Catherine found herself spending more time with Cole as they worked, and she began to understand what Emma saw in him. He was principled and brave, but also kind and thoughtful in small ways. He checked on Emma constantly, making sure she was comfortable and safe. He listened when Catherine spoke and treated her opinions with respect despite her being an outsider to this harsh land. The night before the planned ambush, tension ran high. Emma was quiet throughout dinner, barely eating. Cole kept glancing at her with worry in his eyes. After the meal, he asked her to walk with him outside. Catherine watched them through the window, seeing them stop near the corral. Yet, even from a distance, she could see the emotion on both their faces. Cole reached out and took Emma's hands, speaking earnestly. Emma shook her head, seemingly arguing with him, but then Cole pulled her close and kissed her. Catherine turned away to give them privacy, smiling despite the dangerous circumstances. Whatever happened tomorrow, at least they had tonight. When Emma came back inside, her eyes were red but shining with something like hope. "He told me he loves me," she whispered to Catherine. "He said when this is over, if I will have him, he wants me to stay here as his wife." "And what did you say?" Catherine asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. "I said yes," Emma replied, a smile breaking through her tears. "I said yes to everything, to staying, to marrying him, to building a life here. Catherine, I have never been so scared and so happy at the same time." The morning of the ambush dawned clear and hot. Cole dressed carefully. checking his weapons and going over the plan one more time with Judge Harrison and the marshals who had arrived in the pre-dawn darkness. The stagecoach was loaded with crates filled with rocks to simulate the weight of gold bars. Emma held onto Cole for a long moment before he climbed onto the driver's seat. "Come back to me," she whispered. "I promise," Cole replied, kissing her forehead. "We are going to end this today, and then we can start planning our future." Catherine gave him an encouraging nod, trying to project confidence she did not entirely feel. Then Cole snapped the reins and the stagecoach rolled out, beginning its journey along the route to Tucson. The marshals had already taken their positions, hidden in the rocks and vegetation along the road where intelligence suggested Reeves was most likely to attack. Catherine, Emma, and several of Cole's ranch hands remained at the house, armed and ready in case this was somehow a diversion for an attack on the ranch itself. The hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Catherine tried to keep Emma distracted with conversation, but neither of them could focus on anything but worry. Every sound made them jump. Every moment that passed felt like an eternity. It was early afternoon when they heard the distant crack of gunfire. Emma gasped and started for the door, but Catherine grabbed her arm. "We have to trust the plan," Catherine said, though her own heart was racing. "Cole knows what he is doing. The marshals are there. We have to believe it will work." The gunfire continued for what felt like forever, but was probably only minutes. Then gradually it faded to silence. The waiting that followed was even worse than the sound of battle. Finally, as the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, they spotted a cloud of dust on the road. Catherine and Emma stood on the porch, hands clasped tightly together, as the dust cloud resolved into riders approaching the ranch. Cole was in the lead, upright in the saddle and apparently unharmed. Behind him rode Judge Harrison and several marshals, with a group of men in handcuffs being led on horseback. Catherine felt Emma sag with relief beside her, and she had to blink back tears of her own. Cole dismounted and Emma flew into his arms, holding him as if she would never let go. Catherine watched with a full heart as he wrapped his arms around her sister and buried his face in her hair, murmuring reassurances. Judge Harrison approached Catherine with a satisfied expression. "We got them all. Reeves, his entire gang, and Marshal Griggs. They rode right into the trap, and we caught them with weapons drawn, attempting to rob what they believed was a territorial shipment. Combined with Miss Emma's testimony about what she overheard, we have more than enough evidence for conviction." "So it is really over?" Catherine asked, hardly daring to believe it. "It is over," Harrison confirmed. "Your sister is safe now. She can testify at the trial without fear, and after that, she is free to live her life however she chooses." That evening was the first peaceful one Catherine had experienced since arriving in Arizona. They gathered for dinner with Judge Harrison and the marshals before the lawmen headed back to Tucson with their prisoners. The mood was celebratory, with relief and joy replacing the tension that had hung over the ranch for weeks. After the others had left, Cole, Emma, and Catherine sat on the porch watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The desert night was cool and clear, and Catherine found herself thinking that she understood why Emma had fallen in love with this place as well as the man beside her. "What will you do now?" Cole asked Catherine. "Will you return to Boston?" Catherine had been thinking about that question all day. Boston felt like another world now, a distant and somehow less real place than this ranch in the Arizona territory. "I do not know," she admitted. "I came here to find Emma, and I did. But the thought of going back to my old life, knowing she is here building something new, it feels wrong somehow." "You could stay," Emma suggested hopefully. "There is plenty of room, and Cole's ranch is growing. He could use help with the business side of things, the books and the correspondence. You always were better with numbers and letters than I was." Cole nodded agreement. "You would be welcome here for as long as you want to stay, Catherine. You are Emma's family, which makes you my family too. Besides, you have proven yourself brave and resourceful. Those are qualities I value." Catherine felt warmth spread through her chest. "I will think about it," she said, though she suspected she had already made her decision. The trial took place 6 weeks later in Tucson. Catherine and Emma traveled there with Cole, who never left their side throughout the proceedings. Emma's testimony was clear and compelling, and when combined with the evidence of the attempted robbery and documentation Judge Harrison had gathered of previous crimes, the case against Reeves and his gang was overwhelming. Marshal Griggs tried to claim he had been coerced into helping the outlaws, but too many witnesses came forward with stories of his corruption and complicity. In the end, he was convicted along with the rest and sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. Dalton Reeves and his top men received even harsher sentences. As they were led away, Reeves looked at Emma with such hatred that Catherine felt a chill run down her spine. But Cole stepped between them, his presence a solid barrier, and Catherine knew her sister would always be protected. With the trial concluded and justice served, Emma and Cole began planning their wedding in earnest. They decided on a simple ceremony at the ranch in early December, when the worst of the summer heat had passed, but before winter weather could make travel difficult. Catherine stayed at the ranch through the autumn, helping with preparations and gradually taking over management of Cole's business accounts. She discovered she had a talent for negotiation and organization, and under her management, Cole was able to expand his contracts with the mining companies and improve his profit margins significantly. She also discovered something else. The territory was full of opportunities for an educated, determined woman. Catherine began corresponding with other business owners and ranchers, offering her services as a bookkeeper and business consultant. Before long, she had more work than she could handle and was contemplating hiring an assistant. Emma and Cole's wedding day arrived with perfect weather, cool and clear under a brilliant blue sky. Emma wore a simple white dress that Catherine had helped her sew, with wildflowers in her hair. Cole wore his best suit, cleaned and pressed for the occasion, and the look in his eyes when he saw Emma walking toward him made Catherine's throat tighten with emotion. Judge Harrison performed the ceremony, having become a friend to all of them through the ordeal they had shared. The guest list was small but meaningful: neighboring ranchers and their families, a few of Emma's former students from Copper Ridge, Mrs. Patterson from the general store, and Cole's ranch hands who had become like family to him. When Cole and Emma exchanged their vows, Catherine saw the future spreading before them like the vast Arizona landscape. This was not the life any of them had imagined back in Boston, but it was real and true and built on love and courage. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with food and music and dancing under the stars. Catherine found herself partnered with several of the neighboring ranchers' sons, young men who were clearly interested in the educated and successful Miss Monroe, who had made such a name for herself in the territory. But it was a quiet conversation with a man named Daniel Hart, a rancher from a property bordering Cole's, that caught and held her attention. Daniel was close to her own age, with kind eyes and a quick intelligence that matched her own. He had recently returned from back east where he had been studying new ranching techniques, and he spoke passionately about his plans to improve his family's property. As they talked, Catherine felt a spark of connection she had not expected. Daniel was clearly interested in more than just her business acumen, and for the first time since arriving in Arizona, Catherine allowed herself to consider that perhaps she too could build a future here that included not just professional success but personal happiness as well. As the years that followed were kind to both sisters. Emma and Cole's love only deepened as they built their life together on the ranch. Their first child, a son they named James, was born in the autumn of 1883, followed 2 years later by a daughter named Catherine in honor of the aunt who had risked everything to find her mother. Catherine's business grew until she had clients throughout the territory. She married Daniel Hart in the summer of 1884, and together they built one of the most successful ranches in Arizona. Their partnership was equal in all ways, with Daniel respecting and encouraging Catherine's business endeavors, even as they worked together to expand their holdings. The two couples remained close, their properties adjacent and their lives intertwined. Their children grew up together, running between the two ranches as if they were one. Family dinners were regular occurrences, and both Emma and Catherine often reflected on how different their lives had turned out from anything they could have imagined back in Boston. On warm evenings, the two sisters would sometimes sit together on one porch or the other, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and red, They would talk about their children, their husbands, their plans and dreams, and occasionally about the terrifying weeks when Emma had been in hiding and Catherine had traveled across the country to find her. "I still cannot believe you came all that way on your own," Emma said one such evening, her youngest child sleeping in her arms. "You could have been killed." "I could not have lived with myself if I had not tried," Catherine replied, watching her own children play with Cole and Emma's older two in the yard. "You are my sister, my family. There was never any question that I would come. That missing persons case led you to Cole's ranch, and it changed everything," Emma said softly. "Not just for me, but for you too. If you had not come looking for me, you would never have met Daniel. You would never have discovered your talent for business or fallen in love with this place." Catherine smiled, thinking about the strange twists of fate that had brought them all together. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if things had gone differently. If you had not witnessed Griggs' meeting, or if you had not come to Cole for help, or if I had given up when the marshal told me to go home." "But you did not give up," Emma said, reaching over to squeeze her sister's hand. "You never gave up on me, and Cole never gave up on justice. And now look at us. We have everything we could possibly want." It was true. Catherine looked out at the land that had become her home, at the family she and Emma had built here in the wild Arizona territory. The journey that had begun with a desperate telegram and a missing sister had led her to a life richer and more fulfilling than anything she had known in Boston. The missing persons case had indeed led her to the Cowboy's ranch, where he had been hiding her sister and keeping her safe. But it had also led Catherine to discover her own strength, her own capabilities, and her own chance at love and happiness in the Wild West. As the sun sank below the horizon and the first stars began to appear, Catherine felt complete peace. This was home now, not just the land, but the people, and the life they had all built together. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced everything else, with courage, love, and the unbreakable bonds of family. The two sisters sat together in comfortable silence, their children's laughter echoing through the cooling evening air, and Catherine knew that every risk she had taken, every difficult moment she had endured, had been worth it for this perfect present and the bright future still unfolding before them all.